So I don't even know how you feel about it, because like I saw somebody last night literally write like a 14 tweet like whatever about it, and I immediately just logged off Twitter. I'm like, geez, the movie just came out. It's 7:00 at night on opening night. You don't need to do a 14 tweet storm about the movie.
So
like, let people go see it.
So I was doing it in the Discord. I was watching it last night.
That's different.
And I was tweeting a little bit of my thoughts. So the first thing I did, I think I mentioned, was that Kang, what his introduction was incredible. I thought he made Thanos look like a little bitch. And
yeah, I honestly, Jonathon Majors,
he was incredible.
Very quickly becoming one of my favorites. You know what I mean?
He was incredible, and I can see why the consensus, even among the very bad reviews, and there were a lot of them, everyone pretty much agreed that Jonathon Majors pretty much carried, and I could definitely see that. So once again, we won't be doing a spoiler review. We'll just be doing a spoiler-free review. But my thoughts was that the movie is better than I thought it would be based on the critics. But like after watching it, I knew immediately that this was going to have a much higher audience score than a critic score, and that's exactly right. I checked Rotten Tomatoes; it was like a 43%, which is crazy. That's lower than She-Hulk, which is one of the worst shows ever made, and the audience was 84%. So there was a pretty substantial difference, and I understand why. Like, if you just go in there and you just
turn your brain off,
it just expected typical Marvel formula. It's fine. It's fine by Marvel standards. Like it was much better, for example, than Love and Thunder.
I'll actually agree with that.
Which is not hard to do. I liked it better than Wakanda Forever. Wakanda Forever I thought was pretty boring for the most part. And the parts that weren't boring made me furious. But I felt like Ant-Man 3 was pretty formulaic and offensive. My problem was that it also went light on the politics well, but they did insert some, and it was very cringe when they did, like, yeah, like this, it was like one of those things where, you know, the writers want to make a political statement, but you could tell they're too dumb and don't actually understand the politics they're trying to exploit, so they just end up just sounding ridiculous. Obviously socialism is a charged word, but you know, we can learn from it. Like, okay, Bernie, shut up. And
I thought go ahead, sorry.
And Cassie Lang is basically Antifa now, so which was interesting, and a scientist. So that was an interesting turn in her character. But I think the movie's biggest sin was that it wasn't what it advertised itself to be in multiple important ways. Like, they advertised it as this much more serious, darker take compared to what we've gotten from the previous Ant-Man films, which were basically, for the most part, they were basically relatively lighthearted heist movies. And this one, you know, bringing in Kang, the new Thanos, the big bad, you know, you saw a lot of violence, a lot of blood, and it was like, okay, this is going to be, you know, darker. It's going to be sacrifices. You know, it may look like in the trailers that, Scott was, you know, was deceived by Kang because, you know, this left residual trauma that he felt by, you know, being so absent from his daughter's life. And we got none of that. That was not the movie at all. it was actually a lighthearted to a fault, you know, typical Marvel nonsense where even in the midst of tense scenes where people are literally dying, they have to force some mostly cringe humor into it. The whole Scott not having enough time thing with his Cassie was emphasized in the trailer, but never really came up at all in the movie, but pretty much one passing reference. It had no relation whatsoever to Kang. It was basically a pretty straightforward meet Kang, Kang bad, you stop Kang, all fight, blah blah blah, usual Marvel nonsense. And it didn't really explore that trauma, that emotional growth that we were expecting and that they pitched it for. So in that regard, it was very disappointing. The third act I thought kind of much fell apart. But overall, I thought it was mid. I mean, it was elevated by Jonathon Majors tremendously. Paul Rudd's always charming and wonderful. Love to see him. Love the. Didn't love how they disrespected him in the beginning, but I did appreciate they gave him some genuine moments to be a badass. That was pretty much appreciated. Him and Kang had some really great scenes. Probably the best scene in the entire movie was that first introduction between him and Kang. So there was definitely some right. It left me, the post credit scenes were good, but I think the biggest thing is that at least when it comes to the main villain of Phase 5 and 6, I think we're in good hands with Jonathon Majors. He is fantastic. The quality of the movies, that remains to be seen. But at the very least, I thought it was better than the last two Marvel products, excluding the holiday special.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with a lot of what you said, and that's not always a commonality for us. I think it's worth seeing. I think it was worth seeing in the movie theater for me. I don't think it was like spectacular. It's not one of my favorites, but I think it did what it needed to do really well. It was enjoyable. It was kind of like this. It felt very Guardians to me, like Guardians light, maybe. Okay,
yeah,
because you don't necessarily care as much about all the other characters, and I think that's one of the things that one of the negatives for me was that, like, you've got like all these extra creatures and everything, and I don't know, like the stakes aren't really that high for them because you're like, all right, whatever. You don't have a chance to like care about any of them. So like they're just getting gunned down. Who cares? Like
there are really no stakes.
Like,
there are really no stakes at all in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm assuming at some point we're gonna look back on it and we're gonna see what the stakes are, because it'll be more clear once it all pieces together.
We know what the greater thing is, what the greater threat is. I mean, it was pretty much spelled out in the movie multiple times. But in the context of the movie, it's self-contained, there were no real stakes. And even at the end, where we thought, oh, okay, this is a really darker turn for Marvel. No, everything's fine. Everything has to be fine. We're back to no consequences. No real stake. So. No real stakes, no real consequences.
But then when there are stakes and consequences, everybody's mad because now, Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. are gone. You know what I mean? And so it's like a catch-22, I think.
Yeah.
People want there to be stakes because I've seen people complaining about MODOK for a number of reasons. And listen,
I mean, the face, holy shit.
I mean, listen, how are you going to make that look good though? You know what I mean? Like
CGI.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did what they needed to
practical effects. Marvel's Avengers did it right.
It wasn't great, but I know why they did it the way they did it, so I just accept it and it makes sense. When he's got the gold shield down, he looks freaking awesome.
Yeah, he should have kept that. He should have kept that on.
But like I've seen people complaining that like it made no sense for him to be there. You know what I mean? For the reasons that you kind of said, and it's like. And people complaining that it's not MODOK, you know what I mean? But it's a multiverse.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about.
You just saw 87 different Kangs, and you're worried about that's not the right MODOK. You know what I mean? So it's like,
I understand it's weird to me that they're actual MODOK fans, but it's MODOK, but
it's MODOK.
but yeah, I thought purely aesthetically from when I saw him on screen, I wanted him to not be on screen anymore or to put the helmet back on because it was it was horrifying to look at.
But I think that's also the point, you know.
Not in that way. Like the Avengers MODOK is like, oh, he's hideous, but in a that's pretty badass, cool, kind of way. That is like, oh my god, make it stop.
Yeah, I didn't love it either, but I will say I understand why they did it, and it makes sense, and they made MODOK make sense. Why he's in the quantum realm to begin with, like all of that ended up just making sense. And like I've had a few people say that it didn't. I'm like, how? They literally explained it. You've got Kang who has destroyed the Avengers 1,000 times. Of course he knows who MODOK is.
Also,
you know what I mean?
Also, Captain Marvel, Captain America's. I wouldn't use that as an example of stakes because that was very much a self-imposed thing because the actor wanted out, and so it just gave him an out that also gave him a path to come right back in.
I get that.
Whether it's as Nomad or as a multiverse thing, and same thing for Tony. I thought the way that Endgame ended, that's why it was so memorable, despite the fact that the movie is so bad. People love stakes when they love when the battles, they love when it matters, and that's why Endgame has such a lasting impact. That third act, that final snap. I am Iron Man. Yes, it's sad that Tony's gone, but that's not the reason why the MCU fell off. The MCU's been falling off because the shows and the movies have been not good.
And that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. It's like, and I don't even think it's like the quality. The quality is fine. I think the problem is that the people in charge they think they're the smartest people in the room, and they're just doing things that don't make sense. Like if we just look at all the different shows we've had recently, okay, Miss Marvel, we had what for villains? Nobody. Okay.
Yeah. They had the
exactly.
Exactly. Those two people from the beginning of No Way Home that arrested Peter.
Okay, exactly. My point. Okay, so you look at Captain America and the Winter Soldier, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
That had the most memorable villain of all.
Batroc the Leaper and the Flag Smashers.
And racism.
Oh, yes. So look, you're putting these shows out there, but you're having them like, you talk about the stakes. There's no stakes in Batroc the Leaper, who the only reason Batroc the Leaper will ever be thought of as cool, because you definitely didn't read about him in the Spider-Man or Deadpool comics, is because it was George St. Pierre.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he's the only reason that character matters ever. Otherwise, he's like F tier he's like one of the most like laughed at villains of all time. So like you've got that, and then you look at even Hawkeye. You've got Echo and the tracksuit mafia, and sure, you had a little bit of Kingpin sprinkled in it, but not enough. Okay, and now you're gonna turn around and you're gonna take Echo and give Echo a show, and you're wondering why things are falling apart. It's okay to try to take characters like Miss Marvel and Moon Knight that the general public doesn't necessarily recognize or understand and try to elevate them, but you have to give them something they know to go up against. Like even Moon Knight, I love Moon Knight. I thought Moon Knight was really well. Oscar Isaac is amazing, but Moon Knight, even with Ethan Hawke, you're not dealing with a villain that matters. Like, give him like Bushmaster, who obviously most people don't know who Bushmaster is, but Bushmaster is one of his biggest villains and way more interesting. He's just insane. you know? So like it's the choices they're making that is making it difficult. Like, why is nobody excited about this new Shazam movie? Because look at who the villains are. A joke.
Helen Mirren and
Exactly.
Lucy Liu.
Like, but like, if you just look at all these things that they're incorporating into these shows, like Loki. Okay, Loki was fantastic. I think a lot of people really enjoyed Loki. But at the end of the day, until the end, when we finally see Jonathon Majors, like you're dealing with Sylvie and Owen Wilson, like literally Owen Wilson in the Marvel universe. Okay, so it's not like it's good because Tom Hiddleston like captures Loki and he like absolutely carries everything there, but like you're not giving enough people like that people care about, that people know. And I think that's the problem. And then when they do things like what they did with MODOK. They do things like what they did with Taskmaster. They do these things that just don't make sense. And I understand like that. I feel like they make good movies, but like it's the dumb things that they're like, well, I'm smarter than the guy that created this and the people that wrote these comic books, so we're going to do it my way and my interpretation. And I think that's where the major failures are coming in, because you saw it with She-Hulk where they didn't even know what to do with the character. You saw that.
Or the end. They're like, hey, the ending we wrote was terrible, so let's make a ending about how the ending we wrote is terrible, but it's going to be good because we're pointing out that it's terrible. Therefore, it's not terrible because we're so smart.
Yeah, and that to me, I think, is what's really stifling a lot of what they're doing. Miss Marvel, I think, I felt like Miss Marvel. I liked. I forgot her name. Vellani.
Iman Vellani.
Iman Vellani. Yeah, I really liked her as Miss Marvel, but I didn't feel like they gave her like, you can't take Miss Marvel, who outside of Marvel's Avengers fans is not a big enough character to carry her own show from the start, with her family as the supporting cast and a bunch of no-name villains I think were made up for this show. Okay,
but they're gonna now test her on the big screen with that's the Monica Rambeau and Captain Marvel.
You start. That's where you start, and then you do this. But I still think it wouldn't have even mattered, because like,
I think the Marvels are going to be a disaster. Actually, we just saw it got delayed to November.
Yeah. I was reading something on my Discord. Free Willy Rocks, I think, posted that he read somewhere that it was supposed to be like a big musical chunk of it was supposed to be on a musical planet.
Yeah, a musical.
No, like that is exactly what I'm talking about. These people think they're the smartest people in the room. Just give us a freaking space movie,
That's why
it's not hard.
Yeah, I was reading the spoilers, the alleged spoilers, which were probably going to be true a while ago, and I was like, "Ooh, this sounds horrible."
Like, why? Why would we do that? Like, the only musical I want to see is "I Can Do This All Day." Like, that's the only that we got our musical out of the way. Okay, like, why do we need our? And if you're gonna do that, why are you gonna do it with Miss Marvel, Monica Rambeau, and Captain Marvel? What about them even remotely makes sense? Like, why?
Because they think it's fun. I don't know, and I don't think they're going to have a big name villain either. So this is going to be.
I just don't get it.
It's going to be brutal.
Like that's their problem, because you look at like the Batman. Who's he going up against? He's going up against
the Riddler.
Penguin and the Riddler. And you look at these big DC movies. It's Darkseid, and at least they know what they're doing with actual villains.
Even the Flash trailer, which looked fantastic, we had all these questions about what even the hell is that movie, but you get but Zod's back, and you got Keaton Batman, and so it makes having Supergirl there fine, because it's like, okay, well, you got Keaton Batman, you got the freaking Flash, you got Zod back from Man of Steel. That looks cool, and then it looks like they're going to have I'm not sure who he's going to be playing, but I can tell. I saw in the trailer that it looks like the second Barry is going to go bad. So I don't know if he's going to be the Reverse Flash or not. But I saw them fighting briefly, and I saw him have a blue suit with blue lightning. So that's going to be. So that's where they're like, okay, we know we got to make a big splash here. So big set point, the flashpoint, big event, big characters, all that. And Marvel on the other end likes to go dumpster diving for the smaller name characters who don't have successful books, but maybe they check off some boxes, so they think it's worth doing it. And they think they can make the audience gravitate towards them because they're Marvel, and it hasn't really worked out. That's why I'm actually looking forward to kind of Loki season 2 more so, because it seems like this one is mainly going to be Loki and Owen Wilson hunting down different versions of Jonathon Majors, Kang, which sounds cool. I mean, Jonathon Majors is amazing in the role, and we originally were pitched a Loki show that was mainly going to be Loki, and him and Owen Wilson had tremendous chemistry. It was just unfortunate that they bait and switched and made it mostly about Sylvie. But having it mainly be about Owen Wilson, Tom Hiddleston's Loki, and Jonathon Majors Kang's sounds like a much more interesting second season, and I think it can redeem a lot of what went wrong with the first season.
Yeah, I just think it kind of going back to Ant-Man, it's you got the 4 ants, and then you got Kang, and you got MODOK, and then just a bunch of other people that have their parts, like whoever that warrior was that was the leader of the resistance,
the muscle mommy.
Absolutely no idea who that character was.
Yeah, I have no
but
idea.
They were significant, and they could have found a way to work some character into that role that made sense, or purple light forehead man, because I don't know what else to call him.
He's the guy. He's the guy from The Good Place.
I mean,
I
recognize him a little bit.
I love that guy. He was great. He's the black guy in The Good Place. He's the one that's like super neurotic and has a hard time, making decisions, and he's super nerdy.
Oh, the one that's always with Kristen Bell.
Yeah, that guy. I love that guy.
Oh wow. Okay.
I knew. As soon as I saw him, I was like, "Oh, the guy from The Good Place." And then
I knew I recognized him. My wife loves that show.
It's an amazing show. Everyone should watch it.
I've watched it. I've watched it a little bit when she's watching it. But
this is.
I bet if she saw him, she would have known right away.
Of course. But his role. That's why I felt like the Guardians was kind of an apt comparison, because he's basically the running gag character. Every one of these movies now has to have the running gag. The running gag character, Love of Thunder had sadly they had the goats, but you have different characters who's basically there to be they're pretty one note, but they're there to do the one note that's the recurring joke.
The goats were a real thing,
and they did,
like the goats are actually Thor's goats. They're just not that annoying. And they're actually badasses.
They made it so annoying.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, but I'm just saying, like, yeah, that's exactly what they are. But like, at least they were a real thing. I'm not gonna pretend I know everything about every Marvel comic run of all time, but like, there was an opportunity to give us some familiarity with some of the other like creatures down there. And I understand this is how we got Korg and Meek.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I mean, he was literally Korg. He was black. He was literally Black Korg. He was there to do the bit. He was there for for the bit. He can read minds, so that's the bit.
But other than a couple nods to the first two movies with Jimmy Cho and the manager at Baskin Robbins, like there isn't much to even recognize. What's his face wasn't even there. Was it?
Oh, his best friend.
Yeah.
Hey, he didn't make an appearance. Yeah, he didn't make an appearance at all.
Right. So I don't know, man. I just feel like I think it's a solid, fun movie. It's not anything that's gonna make you like hurry to redo your top 10 list. It's not gonna even make you hurry to redo your top 30 list.
It definitely won't make you look up the benefits of socialism.
But if every Marvel movie was at least this, I think we'd all be pretty happy, and we wouldn't really talk about fatigue. Like, it was a solid, fun movie, and as somebody who grew up with, that the George Clooney Batman.
Oof.
And that kind of stuff, like, trust me, we've had worse. That's a good point. We forgot about Bill Murray was in there. We see him in the trailer, so it's not a big spoiler.
But there's a Bill Murray cameo. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I understand what his character was there for, and I understand why he was there. Like, look, Bill Murray is one of those kind of people that just wants to do stuff at this point,
Yeah. He actually did good with him, I thought, in his
I thought so too.
Like, you thought he was just there to be Bill Murray, and then they do a little twist, and you're like, oh, actually, okay, Bill Murray doing okay, I like that.
So I don't think I think people will be pretty satisfied with the movie. You know what I mean? And that's the most you can ask for in most cases, I'm okay with movies. I think too many people expect every piece of media they consume to be a 10 out of 10. And if it's not, then it's fucking trash. You know what I mean?
I prefer to go in expecting at least a 7.
Yeah, that's kind of like, listen, I just want to go in there and hoping that it's about a 6 or a 7, somewhere in between there. And if it's better than that, awesome. You know what I mean? Very few movies do I go in with the high expectations.
I'll go in based on presentation. Like, at this point, I look when I see a Marvel product, I'm like, okay, this is probably the expectation should be 7 on the high end, 2 on the low end.
Yeah.
And it usually falls. I mean, the last few have fallen below that. I thought Wakanda Forever was about a 6, and Love and Thunder was about a 1. So